They thought it was Mercy, then realized the predator was now a human's pet. The screaming started at 3:47 a.m. David Cross jerked awake in his commander's quarters as emergency sirens shrieked through New Haven Colony. Red lights strobed across his walls while his communication unit erupted with panicked voices from the night shift. "Something's in the mining sector! It tore through the barriers like paper! Dear God, the size of this thing!" David was already pulling on his boots when his 12-year-old son Connor burst through the door, eyes wide with excitement rather than fear. The boy had inherited his father's steady nerves and his late mother's insatiable curiosity, a combination that both impressed and terrified David daily. "Dad, did you hear that roar? It didn't sound angry, it sounded hurt." Before David could respond, his door chimed with the urgent pattern reserved for senior staff emergencies. Kate Hayes, the colony's security chief, stood in the hallway with her tactical gear half-fastened and her auburn hair escaping from its regulation bun. Her green eyes held the hard edge of someone who'd survived 15 years of military combat across 3 different war zones. "We've got a problem, Commander," she announced grimly. "The biggest damn problem I've seen since the Titan Rebellion." They rushed through the colony's corridors toward the command center, passing windows that offered glimpses of Arcturus Prime's alien landscape. The twin crimson suns were rising, painting the crystalline formations that covered the planet's surface in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere out there, something massive was moving through the metallic forests, leaving a trail of destruction that defied explanation. Dr. Amanda Brooks met them at the command center doors, her medical coat stained with strange, luminescent fluid that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. The colony's chief scientist had been analyzing attack sites since the incidents began 3 weeks ago, and the exhaustion showed in her hollow eyes and trembling hands. "It's not just big," she announced without preamble, her voice cracking with fatigue and excitement. "It's intelligent. More intelligent than anything we've encountered. Look at this." The main tactical display showed overnight footage from the mining sector. A creature the size of a small building moved through their equipment with impossible grace, its obsidian scales reflecting the artificial lights like polished mirrors. But what captured everyone's attention was its behavior. The creature was carefully dismantling their machinery, removing specific components while leaving everything else completely untouched. "Watch this sequence," Amanda continued, manipulating the display controls with shaking fingers. "It spent 47 minutes studying the quantum resonance chamber before disabling it. It knew exactly which components to remove to shut down the entire system without causing an explosion. It's not attacking randomly," Connor observed, pressing against the viewing screen with the fearlessness that only children possess. "It's looking for something specific." Kate checked her weapons systems automatically, her military training taking over even as her tactical mind struggled to process what she was seeing. 15-foot apex predator that hunts with surgical precision and demonstrates advanced technical knowledge. My assessment? We're completely screwed. David studied the footage more carefully, noting the creature's deliberate movements and the strange care it took to avoid damaging certain structures while systematically destroying others. "Amanda, what else can you tell me about its capabilities? Based on the physical evidence?" She pulled up a series of holographic displays showing claw marks, impact patterns, and structural damage. "It can leap over 100 meters in a single bound, generate enough force to tear through reinforced titanium like aluminum foil, and demonstrate problem-solving skills that rival our best engineers." "But David," she paused, her voice dropping to a whisper, "this thing has been watching us for weeks. Learning our patterns, studying our technology, mapping our weaknesses. It knows exactly what it's doing." The lights in the command center flickered as another surge of power drained from their defensive grid. Connor pointed to a secondary display showing energy readings from across the colony. "Dad, look at the power consumption patterns. They're not random either." David examined the data his son had noticed, feeling a chill run down his spine. The creature's attacks weren't just physically precise. They were strategically designed to gradually weaken the colony's defensive capabilities without triggering a complete evacuation. It's testing us, he realized aloud. This isn't hunting behavior. It's reconnaissance. The communications array activated with an incoming transmission that made everyone freeze. The elongated features of a Velonian diplomat materialized in the center of the room, the alien's translucent skin showing deep purple patterns that David recognized as extreme distress. Behind the ambassador, David could see other Velonian officials moving with urgent purpose. Commander Cross, the figure announced, its voice carrying harmonics that translated as barely controlled panic. I am Ambassador Threnake of the Velonian Council. We received your emergency transmission and... The alien paused, its skin shifting to even darker hues. The situation is far worse than you realize. David stepped forward, noting the unusual formality in the ambassador's tone. In 3 years of regular contact with Velonian traders, he never heard such gravity in their communications. Ambassador, we're dealing with some kind of intelligent predator that's systematically targeting our operations. Can you tell us what we're facing? The alien's skin color shifted through a spectrum that David had learned indicated profound fear mixed with ancient memories of trauma. You are being hunted by what my people call a Shadowhawk, the most feared predator in this sector of space. In our recorded history, 17 different colonial expeditions have encountered these creatures. The ambassador paused, its large black eyes reflecting light in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. None survived longer than 48 hours after first contact. The weight of this statement settled over the command center like a death sentence. Kate's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm, though she knew conventional weapons would be useless against something that could tear through their strongest barriers. Amanda began frantically pulling up xenobiological databases, searching for any additional information about these creatures. Connor, however, raised his hand with the earnestness of a student asking a teacher a question that everyone else was afraid to voice. Ambassador, has anyone ever tried to figure out why they attack? Like, what they actually want? The question seemed to surprise the Velonian, its skin shifting to lighter patterns that indicated confusion. Young human, Shadowhawks are apex predators. They attack because it is their nature to hunt and kill. No other motivation has ever been documented. But what if they're not hunting? Connor persisted, his 12-year-old logic cutting through adult assumptions. What if they're trying to communicate, and we just don't understand their language? Kate snorted, though her expression showed grudging respect for the boy's courage. Connor, that thing could crush a battle tank with its bare claws. I don't think it's interested in having a conversation. Ambassador Threnake's skin displayed complex patterns that David couldn't interpret, but he sensed a shift in the alien's demeanor. Young human, your question demonstrates unusual thinking. In 40 centuries of Velonian civilization, no one has suggested that possibility. Maybe that's why everyone keeps getting killed. Connor replied with the devastating honesty that only children could deliver. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment, its skin cycling through patterns that seemed to indicate deep consideration. We can evacuate your entire population within 72 hours. Our transport vessels are already en route. This would be a mercy, to leave before the killing escalates to full territorial elimination. David looked around the command center, taking in the faces of people who had invested years of their lives building something meaningful on this distant world. Kate's expression showed the grim calculation of a soldier evaluating impossible odds. Amanda's face reflected the conflict between scientific curiosity and survival instinct. But it was Connor's unwavering determination that made David's decision for him. 72 hours to find an alternative approach, David said carefully. Can you give us that long, Ambassador? I will maintain evacuation ships at the edge of your system. Threnake replied, its skin showing patterns that might have been admiration or concern. But understand, once a Shadowhawk begins its final hunt, no force in the galaxy has ever stopped it. The creatures possess capabilities that exceed our understanding of biological limitations. The transmission ended, leaving them in heavy silence broken only by the hum of monitoring equipment and the distant sound of automated systems attempting to repair the damage from the previous night's attack. "So what's the plan?" Amanda asked, though her tone suggested she suspected they were already out of options. David was about to respond when proximity alarms screamed through the facility with an intensity that made everyone wince. The main display showed massive movement signatures converging on their position from 4 different directions, each one larger than anything their sensors were designed to track. "Multiple contacts," Kate reported, her hands dancing across weapon controls while her face went pale. "Size estimates are, this has to be a sensor malfunction. These readings can't be right." "What are you seeing?" David demanded, though he dreaded the answer. "According to our instruments, we've got at least 5 creatures, each one larger than what we've been tracking. They're surrounding the colony in a coordinated pincer movement. Classic military encirclement tactics." Connor pressed against the main viewing window, his eyes scanning the crystalline formations beyond their perimeter with the intensity of someone looking for specific details rather than general threats. "Dad, look at the metal trees." David joined his son at the window and felt his blood chill. The towering crystalline structures that covered Arcturus Prime's surface were resonating, producing haunting harmonic tones that seemed to come from multiple sources simultaneously. The sounds were complex, layered, almost musical, but with an underlying mathematical precision that spoke of intelligence and purpose. "They're singing," Connor whispered in amazement, his face pressed against the transparent aluminum barrier. Amanda's scientific instruments went wild as she analyzed the acoustic patterns, data streams flowing across her displays faster than she could process them. "The harmonic frequencies are incredibly complex. Mathematical progressions, geometric sequences, quantum resonance patterns. This isn't random noise. This is structured communication using principles of advanced physics." "It's not just communication," David realized, watching the patterns on Amanda's displays. "They're talking to each other about us, coordinating their approach." Kate's tactical display showed the 5 massive creatures moving in perfect coordination, closing the distance to the colony with military precision that would have impressed her old commanding officers. "Communication or not, we've got maybe 10 minutes before they reach our outer perimeter. I'm reading approach vectors that will hit us simultaneously from 5 different angles." The defensive systems around New Haven Colony hummed to life, energy barriers flickering into existence while automated weapons platforms emerged from concealed positions. The colony had been designed to repel wild animals and provide basic protection against raiders, not to withstand a coordinated assault by creatures the size of buildings. That's when Connor did something that changed everything. The boy moved to the colony's external communication system with the decisive confidence that only children possess when adults have run out of ideas. His small hands worked the controls with surprising skill. He'd been helping Amanda with communication protocols for months, treating it like an elaborate game. "Hello?" he said simply, his young voice broadcasting across the crystalline landscape through every speaker and communication array the colony possessed. "We're not here to hurt you. We know you're intelligent. We just want to understand what you need." The effect was immediate and shocking. The advancing creatures stopped as one, their massive forms freezing in place among the metallic formations like ancient statues suddenly come to life. The harmonic singing of the crystal structures shifted to new patterns, complex, questioning tones that seemed to pulse with intelligent curiosity, and something that might have been surprise. "Connor, get away from that microphone," Kate ordered, her military instincts screaming danger even as her tactical assessment showed the creatures had stopped their advance. But David held up a hand to stop her, his engineer's mind recognizing that something unprecedented was happening. His son had just accomplished in 30 seconds what their defensive systems couldn't manage in 3 weeks of preparation. One of the creatures, the largest, standing nearly 20 feet tall with scales that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways, began to approach the colony's main entrance. But instead of the aggressive advance they expected, it moved slowly, deliberately, its massive head held in what almost seemed like a gesture of respectful attention. "It's listening," Connor said with absolute certainty, his intuition cutting through adult skepticism like a blade. "Dad, it's waiting for us to say something else." Amanda's instruments were recording everything, her scientific mind racing to catalog the implications of what they were witnessing. "The acoustic patterns from the crystal formations are changing in direct response to Connor's voice. Whatever these creatures are, they're demonstrating real-time adaptive communication. The complexity is beyond anything we've seen from non-human intelligence." The massive creature stopped approximately 30 meters from their outer barrier, well within range of their defensive weapons but making no threatening moves. Its large, multifaceted eyes seemed to study the colony with an intelligence that was both alien and unmistakably self-aware. David made a decision that would have seemed insane hours earlier. "Connor, try talking to it again. But stay behind the barrier controls, and if anything goes wrong, you've hit the emergency lockdown." The boy nodded seriously, understanding the gravity of the moment even as his excitement was palpable. "We know you're intelligent," he said into the communication system, his voice carrying across the alien landscape. "We know you've been trying to tell us something. Can you help us understand what you need?" The massive creature's response was immediate and complex. It produced a series of tones that were clearly artificial, precise harmonic intervals that seemed to incorporate mathematical concepts Connor recognized from his advanced studies. The sounds were beautiful, haunting, and unmistakably purposeful. "It's using mathematics," Amanda breathed, her instruments analyzing the acoustic patterns in real time. "Prime number sequences, geometric progressions, quantum harmonic ratios. It's demonstrating intelligence using universal mathematical concepts that any technological civilization would recognize." Kate remained skeptical even as her tactical assessments shifted to account for the new reality. "Intelligence doesn't automatically mean friendly. Some of the galaxy's most dangerous species are highly intelligent. The Zerani Empire conquered 12 star systems using advanced mathematics." But Connor was already working with the communication system, trying to respond using the same mathematical harmonics the creature had demonstrated. His first attempts were clumsy, producing dissonant tones that made everyone wince, but the creature showed remarkable patience. It repeated its patterns slowly, encouraging his efforts with subtle variations that seemed designed to teach rather than intimidate. Within an hour, something unprecedented in galactic history was taking place outside New Haven Colony. Meaningful mathematical communication between humans and Shadowhawks. The breakthrough came when Connor managed to convey the concept of friend, using harmonic patterns that Amanda had identified as expressing positive mathematical relationships. The creature's response was a complex symphony of tones that her instruments identified as expressing concepts related to loneliness, loss, and desperate hope. "It's been alone," Connor translated, his understanding of the creature's emotional state somehow perfectly clear despite the alien nature of the communication. "Something terrible happened to its family, and it's been trying to find someone who could understand its pain." David watched his son communicate with a creature that had terrorized their colony for weeks, marveling at how a child's openness had succeeded where adult fear and aggression had failed. But their moment of breakthrough was shattered by new alarms from the colony's long-range sensors. "Incoming ships," Kate announced grimly, her voice cutting through the wonder of first contact like a blade. "Multiple contacts, bearing the energy signatures of the Crimson Corsairs." The name sent chills through everyone present. The Crimson Corsairs were among the most ruthless pirate fleets in the outer systems, known for attacking isolated colonies, enslaving survivors, and leaving worlds stripped of everything valuable. Their leader, Captain Vex Korath, was wanted by law enforcement agencies across 15 different star systems. "How many ships?" David asked, though he dreaded the answer. 6 vessels, all heavily armed. Assault frigates, probably carrying 100 raiders each. They'll be in weapons range in 90 minutes. Ambassador Threneke's face reappeared on their communication display, the Velonian skin showing patterns of urgent warning mixed with what might have been panic. Commander Cross, our sensors have detected the Crimson Corsairs approaching your position. You must evacuate immediately. The Corsairs show no mercy to isolated settlements, and their reputation for brutality is known throughout this sector. David looked through the command center windows at the massive Shadowhawk that remained patiently near their entrance, still engaged in harmonic communication with Connor. An impossible idea began forming in his mind, one that would either save them all or get everyone killed. Ambassador, what if we don't run? Commander, you cannot fight a pirate fleet with mining equipment and basic defensive systems. The Crimson Corsairs have destroyed military installations with far better defenses than your colony possesses. You're right, David agreed, his engineering mind already working through the logistics of his crazy plan. But we might not be fighting alone. Connor looked up from his communication with the Shadowhawk, his eyes bright with understanding that seemed far beyond his 12 years. The creature, its name translates to something like Echo. It says the pirates killed its family 3 months ago. It's been waiting for a chance to fight back, but it couldn't face their ships alone. Amanda's instruments detected massive movement throughout the region as the other Shadowhawks responded to Echo's harmonic calls. David, I'm reading movement signatures across a 100-kilometer radius. If these creatures are coordinating their response to the pirate threat. Kate's tactical display showed the approaching pirate fleet, completely unaware that they were flying into what might become the galaxy's first interspecies military alliance. 6 assault frigates against 5 Shadowhawks and a mining colony. The odds still aren't great, but they're considerably better than 0. Connor, David said, turning to his son with the gravity of command decision. Can you ask Echo if its people are willing to work with us against the pirates? The boy nodded and began producing the complex harmonic patterns he'd been learning, his communication with Echo becoming more sophisticated by the minute. The massive creature's response was immediate and unmistakable, a rising chorus of harmonic tones that conveyed determination, anger, and anticipation. Echo says the Shadowhawks have been waiting for an opportunity to strike back at the raiders who destroyed their settlements and killed their families. They'll fight with us, but they need our help to coordinate their attacks against the ships. David activated the colony-wide communication system, his voice carrying to every resident of New Haven. All residents to defensive positions. This is not a drill. We're about to face a pirate attack, but we're not facing it alone. We have allies who have as much reason to hate these raiders as we do. The next 90 minutes passed in frantic preparation, unlike anything the colony had ever experienced. Echo worked directly with human engineers, its intelligence allowing it to quickly understand their technology while sharing insights about Shadowhawk capabilities that revolutionized their tactical planning. The creatures could move across Arcturus Prime's surface faster than any human vehicle, survive impacts that would destroy heavy equipment, and reach positions that were impossible for conventional forces. More importantly, they possessed natural abilities that human technology could enhance. Echo's natural harmonic communication could be amplified by their communication systems to coordinate attacks across vast distances. When the Crimson Corsair fleet entered orbit around Arcturus Prime, Captain Vex Korath expected to find the same easy prey his crew had plundered dozens of times before. Isolated mining colonies were perfect targets, valuable resources, minimal defenses, and populations too small to mount effective resistance. Instead, he found himself facing something unprecedented in pirate experience, a defended world with allies he couldn't have imagined and had no way to detect until it was too late. The first Corsair landing ship touched down in a clearing 15 kilometers from New Haven Colony, disgorging 40 heavily armed raiders equipped for maximum brutality and efficiency. They had perfected their tactics over years of successful attacks, secure the landing zone, advance on the settlement, overwhelm the defenders with superior firepower and ruthless aggression. Echo hit them like a force of nature channeled into perfect tactical purpose. The Shadowhawk's attack came from above, dropping from a crystalline formation with timing that spoke of careful coordination with human spotters. But this wasn't the mindless violence the pirates expected from local wildlife. Echo wore portable shield generators provided by the colony's engineers, carried human communication equipment for real-time tactical coordination, and fought with an intelligence that quickly recognized and exploited weaknesses in the raiders' formation. The creature moved with impossible speed and grace, its massive claws tearing through power armor like fabric, while its natural agility allowed it to dodge energy weapon fire that should have been impossible to avoid. Within minutes, the raiders found themselves fighting an enemy that combined the raw power of an apex predator with the tactical intelligence of a trained military operative. The entire landing force was neutralized in under 8 minutes, with most of the raiders either dead or fled back to their ship in complete panic. Captain Korath received frantic reports from survivors who described a monster that fought like a trained soldier, used advanced equipment, and seemed to anticipate their every tactical move. When the second and third landing parties met similar fates, he realized that Arcturus Prime had become something far more dangerous than a simple mining colony. "All ships, orbital bombardment pattern 7, Korath commanded, his voice tight with the anger of a predator who had suddenly become prey. "If they want to play games with local wildlife, we'll slag the entire surface and take what we want from the ruins." The Crimson Corsair fleet moved into bombardment formation, their heavy weapons charging for a sustained attack that would reduce New Haven Colony to radioactive debris. David watched the tactical display with growing dread, knowing that their defensive barriers couldn't withstand a coordinated orbital strike from 6 assault frigates. That's when Echo did something that changed the course of the battle entirely, and revealed the true scope of Shadowhawk's civilization. Using communication equipment modified by Amanda to work with its natural harmonic abilities, Echo began broadcasting complex signals across multiple frequencies simultaneously. The patterns were unlike anything they had heard before, not simple communication, but intricate codes that seemed to resonate with the planet itself. David initially thought the creature was calling for help from other Shadowhawks in the region, but Connor's translation revealed something far more significant and terrifying for the pirates above. "It's not calling for help," the boy announced excitedly, his eyes wide with wonder as he listened to Echo's harmonic commands. "It's giving activation codes for the planet's defense systems." "Defense systems?" Amanda asked, her scientific mind racing. "What defense systems?" The answer came from space itself in a display of power that redefined everyone's understanding of Shadowhawk technology. Across Arcturus Prime's solar system, the metallic formations covering multiple planets began responding to Echo's harmonic commands with a coordination that spoke of technology so advanced it seemed like magic. These weren't simple crystal structures decorating the landscape. They were components of a vast technological network created by ancient Shadowhawk civilizations, dormant for centuries but still functional and waiting for the proper activation codes. Captain Koratha's fleet found itself surrounded by energy fields that materialized without warning, defensive systems that drew power from the combined mineral formations of multiple worlds. The pirates' weapons were neutralized by electromagnetic pulses, their ship's engines were disabled by gravitational fields, and their crew faced a choice between immediate surrender and certain destruction. "This is impossible," Korath transmitted, his voice filled with disbelief and growing terror. "These are mining worlds. There shouldn't be any advanced defensive technology here." David accepted the communication, with Echo standing beside him in the command center and Connor providing real-time translation of the creature's harmonic responses. "Captain Korath, you've been attacking sacred Shadowhawk sites for years without realizing it. Echo and its people are simply defending their territory using their own technology." "Sacred sites? These creatures are supposed to be mindless predators." "That's what everyone thought. David replied, watching as more Shadowhawks emerged from hiding places across the planet's surface. But Echo and its people are survivors of an ancient civilization that built technological networks across multiple star systems. Your attacks on their cultural sites and the murder of their families have finally pushed them to activate defenses that have been dormant for centuries. The revelation that followed reshaped Galactic understanding of Shadowhawk society and forced a complete revision of interspecies contact protocols. These weren't mindless predators terrorizing isolated settlements. They were the remnants of an advanced civilization that had built defensive networks across multiple star systems, protecting their territory and cultural sites from invasion and destruction. Ambassador Threnake, witnessing these events through real-time transmissions, immediately contacted the Velonian High Council with recommendations for emergency revision of all interspecies contact protocols. The implications were staggering. If Shadowhawks possessed this level of technology, and had been treated as mindless predators for centuries, how many other species had been similarly misunderstood? Within hours, diplomatic ships from a dozen different civilizations were en route to Arcturus Prime, each one eager to establish formal contact with a species that had just demonstrated technological capabilities exceeding most known civilizations. But for David, Connor, and the colonists of New Haven, the most important outcome was simpler and more immediate. They had found a way to coexist peacefully with one of the galaxy's most feared species, creating something entirely new in the process. The prisoners from the Crimson Corsair fleet were transferred to Velonian custody for trial, but not before Captain Korath made a confession that revealed the true scope of the tragedy that had befallen the Shadowhawks. His raids across the outer systems had systematically targeted worlds containing the crystal formations, not because he understood their significance, but because the formations contained rare minerals that were highly valuable on the black market. "We didn't know they were intelligent," Korath said during his interrogation, his voice hollow with the realization of what his actions had caused. "We thought they were just animals defending their territory. We've been destroying their cities, their libraries, their memorial sites, for 3 years." The weight of this revelation hit everyone involved in the first contact situation. The Shadowhawks hadn't been randomly aggressive predators. They had been a dying species trying desperately to protect the last remnants of their civilization from unknowing destruction. Over the following months, New Haven Colony evolved from a simple mining outpost into the center of the galaxy's most important interspecies communication and cultural exchange program. Echo became the first official Shadowhawk ambassador to non-Shadowhawk species, working with Connor to develop translation protocols that allowed meaningful dialogue between radically different forms of intelligence. The process was far from simple. Shadowhawk communication involved not just harmonic patterns, but complex emotional resonances that required both technological enhancement and intuitive understanding. Connor, with his natural ability to interpret emotional content in the harmonic communications, became essential to the translation process. "It's not just about the mathematics," the boy explained to a gathering of xenolinguists who had traveled from across the galaxy to study the new communication methods. "The math is like the grammar, but the emotions are the real meaning. Echo doesn't just tell me what happened, it tells me how it felt about what happened." At 12 years old, Connor became the youngest certified xenolinguist in galactic history, his techniques emphasizing emotional understanding and mathematical harmony rather than traditional linguistic structures. His methods created bridges between species that had previously seemed completely incompatible, opening possibilities for communication that no one had imagined. David watched his son work with Echo and the growing community of Shadowhawks who had emerged from hiding across multiple worlds, marveling at how a child's simple compassion had solved problems that had baffled the galaxy's greatest minds for centuries. The mining operation at New Haven continued, but now in true partnership with Shadowhawk geological knowledge that revealed mineral deposits no human technology could have located. More importantly, the extraction methods were refined to avoid damage to the cultural and technological sites that the Shadowhawks had built into the planet's geological structure. Dr. Amanda Brooks published groundbreaking papers on Shadowhawk intelligence and communication that revolutionized xenobiology, while Kate Hayes developed new security protocols based on cooperation and mutual defense rather than defensive isolation. New Haven Colony became a model for peaceful interspecies coexistence that attracted visitors, researchers, and diplomats from across the galaxy. Perhaps most remarkably, Echo transformed from a lonely, grieving creature desperately seeking communication into a bridge between worlds, helping other Shadowhawks emerge from centuries of isolation and join the growing galactic community. Its harmonic communications became the foundation for a new form of interspecies diplomacy based on emotional resonance and mutual understanding rather than purely logical exchange. The technological revelations continued as more Shadowhawk sites were properly identified and protected rather than mined. The crystal formations were revealed to be living libraries, containing thousands of years of Shadowhawk history, scientific knowledge, and cultural achievements encoded in harmonic patterns so complex that human computers required months to decode even simple messages. They're not just technological artifacts, Amanda explained to a gathering of galactic scientists. They're living memory banks that grow and evolve over time, storing not just information but the emotional context of that information. It's like having access to the thoughts and feelings of an entire civilization. As New Haven Colony expanded to accommodate the growing number of researchers and diplomats, the relationship between humans and Shadowhawks deepened into genuine friendship and mutual respect. Connor spent his days learning from Echo and other Shadowhawks about their history, their technology, and their unique perspective on the universe. They don't see time the way we do, Connor explained to his father one evening as they watched the twin suns set over the crystalline formations. For them, past and present and future are all connected. When Echo talks about its family, it's not just remembering them, it's still experiencing them through the harmonic patterns they left in the crystal networks. This revelation helped explain the intensity of Shadowhawk responses to the destruction of their sites. The crystal formations weren't just historical monuments. They were living connections to loved ones who had died, allowing the survivors to maintain contact with their families and communities across time. David stood on the observation deck of New Haven's greatly expanded command center, watching Connor and Echo work together on increasingly complex projects that fascinated both human and Shadowhawk minds. The boy and the massive creature had developed a friendship that transcended species barriers, creating new possibilities for understanding that neither had imagined when they first met. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species that had developed along radically different evolutionary paths. For too long, fear and misunderstanding had defined relationships between species too different to easily comprehend each other's motivations and needs. New Haven Colony proved that another path was possible. When fear was replaced with curiosity, when assumptions were questioned, and when beings were willing to see past surface differences to find common ground, even the most unlikely partnerships could flourish and create something greater than either species could achieve alone. Echo had taught them that the galaxy's most feared predators weren't monsters. They were simply another species trying to survive, communicate, and find meaning in a vast and often hostile universe. More importantly, they were keepers of knowledge and wisdom that could benefit all intelligent life, if only others were willing to listen and learn. The Shadowhawk networks revealed scientific principles that advanced human understanding of physics, engineering, and biology by centuries. Their harmonic technologies offered new approaches to communication, computation, and energy generation that could revolutionize galactic civilization. But perhaps most importantly, the partnership between humans and Shadowhawks demonstrated that the galaxy's greatest threats often arose not from malicious intent, but from misunderstanding and failure to communicate. Species that seemed hostile might simply be defending themselves against perceived threats, while those that appeared alien might share fundamental desires for connection and understanding. As David watched his son and his unlikely alien friend work together on a harmonic translation device that would allow real-time communication between dozens of different species, he reflected on how completely their understanding had evolved. They had thought Echo was a predator stalking their colony. In reality, it had been a grieving survivor seeking help and understanding. They had assumed its attacks were attempts to destroy their settlement. Instead, they had been desperate efforts to establish communication with the only other intelligent life the creature could find. Most importantly, they had believed that showing mercy meant evacuating and abandoning Arcturus Prime to avoid conflict. But true mercy had come from Connor's simple decision to see Echo as a being in need of help rather than a monster to be feared. The stars above Arcturus Prime held countless other worlds, other species, other opportunities for understanding and cooperation. David smiled as he watched his son and his alien friend work together, knowing that the future they were building would be far stranger, more challenging, and more wonderful than anything they could have imagined when they first arrived on this distant world. In the end, they had thought they were showing mercy by considering evacuation. Instead, they had discovered that real mercy lay in taking the time to understand, to communicate, and to see the humanity, or its equivalent, in beings that seemed completely alien. And in that discovery, both species had found something they hadn't even realized they were looking for, a way to be less alone in the vast darkness between the stars, and the beginning of a galactic community based on understanding rather than fear. The future belonged to those brave enough to listen to monsters and wise enough to hear the pain behind the roar.